She lived by watching me, my granddaughter, Emma. 9 years old, with sandy blonde hair, she insisted on braiding herself every morning, even though half the strands would escape by noon. She had this way of tilting her head slightly when she looked at you, compensating for the cochlear implant on her right ear that gave her access to a world she'd been born without. Everything that happened next, the gasps from the social workers, the moment my daughter's lawyer went from smug to silent, the way the judge's hands trembled as she held that small device. None of it would make sense without understanding one thing about Emma. She noticed everything. She had to. When you spend the first 3 years of your life in complete silence, you learn to read the world differently. I'm 65 years old. I raised my daughter Claire in this same house, the white 2-story on Maple Street with the porch that needs repainting. I retired from teaching elementary school after 37 years. I thought I was done raising children. Then Claire showed up at my door 6 years ago with a 3-year-old who couldn't hear, a diaper bag, and a promise she'd be back in 2 days. That was May 14th, 2018. I remember because it was Emma's 3rd birthday, and Claire had forgotten. I still have the gas station cupcake I bought that afternoon, or what's left of it, dried out in a box in my closet. I kept it. I don't know why. Maybe I thought Claire would come back and we'd laugh about it. She didn't come back in 2 days. Or 2 weeks. The police found her in a motel room in Richmond with her boyfriend, both of them unconscious, surrounded by enough fentanyl that the officer who filed the report wrote "miracle they survived" in his notes. I got temporary custody while Claire went to rehab, then another rehab, then jail for 6 months on possession charges. Emma stayed with me. I learned about cochlear implants, about speech therapy 3 times a week, about IEP meetings at school. I learned that Emma's hearing loss was genetic, something called connexin 26, a mutation she inherited from Claire's ex-boyfriend, a man I'd met exactly once before he disappeared. I learned that Emma was brilliant, patient, observant in ways that unnerved me sometimes. She would sit at the kitchen table doing homework and glance up every few minutes, checking if I was okay. If I sighed too heavily, she'd ask, "Nana, you sad?" In that careful way she pronounced words, slightly delayed in processing what she heard. I taught her that nobody was perfect, that making mistakes was human, that the important thing was trying. She taught me that silence isn't empty. She taught me to pay attention. Claire got out of jail 22 months ago. She went to a 6-month program upstate, one of those faith-based places that claims a 70% success rate, though I couldn't find evidence of that anywhere. She called me twice in those 6 months. Once to ask for money for toiletries. Once to tell me she was praying for Emma. When she got out, she moved into a sober living house in Newport News, got a job at a Dollar General, started attending NA meetings. She texted me pictures of her chips. 30 days clean, 60 days, 90. She asked to see Emma. Supervised visits at a McDonald's play place. Me sitting 3 tables away pretending to read a magazine while watching Claire watch her daughter like Emma was a stranger. Which she was, really. Emma didn't remember her mother. She was 3 when Claire left. Now she was 8, turning 9. The visits went okay, I guess. Emma was polite. She'd show Claire her schoolwork, talk about her friend Zoe from speech therapy, explain how her cochlear implant worked when Claire asked. Claire cried a lot during those early visits, said she was sorry, that she was different now, that she'd found Jesus and gotten clean and wanted to be a real mother. Emma would nod and say, "That's good, Mom," in the same tone she used when I told her we were having broccoli for dinner. Accepting but not enthusiastic. 6 months of visits. Then Claire's lawyer called me. Her name was Patricia Hammond, and she had one of those voices that sounds friendly until you realize it's rehearsed. She informed me that Claire was filing for custody. Full custody. She'd been clean for 8 months now, had stable housing, stable employment, was attending therapy and NA meetings, had completed parenting classes. The Department of Social Services was recommending reunification. I remember sitting on my porch after that call, watching the sun set behind Mrs. Chen's oak tree across the street, thinking about that word, reunification, as if Claire and Emma had ever been unified in the first place. I hired a lawyer. I couldn't afford a good one. James Peterson worked out of a strip mall office between a tax preparation service and a vape shop. He was 62, semi-retired, took my case for $1,500 flat because he felt bad for me. He told me honestly, "Mrs. Morrison, unless you can prove Claire's in active danger, the courts favor biological parents, especially mothers who've completed treatment programs." The first seed of doubt was planted by the social worker. Her name was Amanda Rice, 28 years old, fresh out of grad school with a master's in social work and a lot of opinions about family systems and trauma-informed care. She came to my house for a home study, walked through Emma's room with its shelf of library books and the walls covered in Emma's drawings of cats, every single one, a different breed, because Emma had memorized a book about cats and could identify 47 varieties on sight. Amanda asked Emma questions while I sat in the living room, pretending not to listen. "Do you love your mom?" Emma said yes. "Would you like to live with her?" Emma hesitated, then said, "I don't know. I live with Nana." Amanda wrote something in her notebook. Later, after Emma went upstairs to practice her violin, she was learning Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and it sounded like someone strangling a cat, but I loved every minute of it. Amanda sat across from me with her laptop and her evaluation. Forms. "Mrs. Morrison, can I be frank?" She didn't wait for me to answer. "Emma's very attached to you, that's clear, but she's also resilient. Children are resilient. And research shows that children do best with their biological parents when that parent has done the work to get healthy. Claire has done that work." I wanted to ask her what she knew about doing work. If she'd ever spent 3 years teaching a child to hear, to speak, to trust that the world wouldn't abandon her again. If she'd ever held a sobbing 9-year-old who'd had a nightmare about being left alone in an empty house. But I didn't. I said, "Emma needs stability. She's had that with me." Amanda smiled, the kind of smile that's meant to be sympathetic but lands as condescending. "I understand this is difficult, but we have to consider what's best for Emma long term. She needs her mother. Claire deserves a chance to prove she's changed." The hearing was scheduled for November 15th. I had 3 months to prepare. James told me to document everything, so I did. I kept a journal of Emma's routine, her doctor's appointments, her IEP meetings, her speech therapy progress. I gathered report cards, letters from her teachers, photos of birthday parties and school plays. I thought facts would matter. I thought evidence of stability would count for something. I was wrong about what kind of evidence would matter. Claire's lawyer was good, really good. Patricia Hammond wore expensive suits and had a strategy. She brought witnesses. Claire's NA sponsor, a woman named Deborah who testified that Claire was committed to sobriety, never missed a meeting, sponsored other women in recovery. Claire's therapist, Dr. Mark Chen, who testified via Zoom that Claire had processed her trauma, developed healthy coping mechanisms, demonstrated genuine remorse and desire to parent. Claire's supervisor at Dollar General, who said Claire was reliable, showed up on time, got promoted to shift lead after 4 months. Then, they brought the expert, Dr. Sarah Williams, a psychologist who specialized in family reunification. She'd never met Claire. She'd never met Emma. But she had a PhD and 30 years of experience, and she sat in that witness stand and explained to the judge about attachment theory, about the importance of the mother-child bond, about how children who are separated from biological parents suffer long-term psychological effects even when raised in loving alternative homes. "Grandparents play a vital role," Dr. Williams said, looking at me with what I'm sure she thought was kindness. "But they're not a replacement for a parent. Mrs. Morrison is 65. She's done an admirable job, but we have to think about Emma's future. What happens when Mrs. Morrison is 70? 75? Emma needs a parent in their 30s, someone with the energy and longevity to raise her through adolescence and into adulthood." I sat there listening to this woman explain why I was too old, too tired, too temporary. James objected. The judge sustained it. It didn't matter. The damage was done. I caught sight of Claire's face. She looked sympathetic. Sad, even. But her lawyer looked satisfied. It was the therapist's testimony that broke me, though. Not Dr. Williams, who didn't know us, but Emma's own therapist, Dr. Lisa Brennan had been seeing Emma for 18 months, ever since Emma started having anxiety about her cochlear implant malfunctioning. I thought Dr. Brennan liked me. We'd had good conversations during joint sessions about Emma's progress. I trusted her. Patricia Hammond called her to the stand. Dr. Brennan, in your professional opinion, how would you characterize Emma's attachment to her grandmother? Strong. Very strong. Emma feels safe with Mrs. Morrison. And her attachment to her biological mother? It's developing. Emma's curious about Claire. She asks questions. She's expressed some interest in spending more time with her mother. My stomach dropped. Emma had asked once, maybe twice, casual questions. What was Mom like when she was little? Does Mom like cats? I'd answered honestly. I thought that was healthy. Now it was being used as evidence that Emma wanted to live with Claire. Dr. Brennan, have you observed any concerns about Mrs. Morrison's parenting? Dr. Brennan hesitated. I saw it. That tiny pause before she said, Mrs. Morrison is very protective. Understandably so, given Emma's medical needs and Claire's history. But I have noticed that Emma sometimes struggles with independence. She's very reliant on her grandmother for decision-making. I've been working with them on age-appropriate autonomy. Protective. Overprotective. That's what she meant. I was smothering Emma, making her dependent, preventing her from growing up. That's what they heard. I could see it on the judge's face. James cross-examined. He asked Dr. Brennan if Emma showed any signs of wanting to leave my care. She said no. He asked if Emma had any behavioral issues. She said no. Emma was well-adjusted, happy, thriving academically and socially. But the seed was planted. I was old. I was overprotective. I was temporary. That night, I sat in Emma's room while she slept. She had her cochlear processor on her nightstand, the external part that she wore during the day, now charging in its case. The internal part was surgically implanted, a miracle of technology that let her hear my voice saying I love you before bed. I thought about Dr. Williams saying I'd be 75 when Emma was in high school. She was right. I would be. Maybe I'd be dead. Maybe I'd have dementia. Maybe I wouldn't be able to take care of her. Maybe I was the problem. Claire took the stand the next day. She cried, of course. Talked about hitting rock bottom, about losing everything, about the day she realized she had a choice between drugs and her daughter. I chose drugs, she said, tears streaming. That's my shame. That's what I have to live with every day. But I'm choosing differently now. I'm choosing Emma. I'm choosing to be her mother. The judge asked her questions. How would she support Emma? She had a job. She'd enrolled Emma in the school near her apartment. She'd researched audiologists in the area for cochlear implant maintenance. What about her sobriety? She had a sponsor, a therapist, a support network through NA, a plan for preventing relapse. What made her think she could parent a child with special medical needs? She'd taken classes. She'd read books. She'd consulted with Emma's speech therapist about continuing services. She had answers for everything. Patricia Hammond presented a parenting plan. Claire would have full custody. I could have visitation every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. They were being generous, Patricia said. They didn't have to offer me anything. But Claire recognized my role in Emma's life and wanted to maintain that relationship. I watched Emma during all this. She sat next to me in the courtroom, her cochlear processor picking up every word. She was supposed to be in school, but the judge had allowed her to attend. James thought her presence might help. Cute kid, sympathetic story. Judge sees what she's taking away. But Emma wasn't paying attention to the proceedings. She kept touching her processor, adjusting it, taking it off to look at it, putting it back on. I thought maybe the courtroom acoustics were bothering her. Too many echoes, too much noise. Nana, she whispered at one point, my processor's being weird. Do you want to step outside and check it? I whispered back. She shook her head, kept fidgeting with it. The judge called a recess. James said it was going badly. I knew that. He said I could testify after lunch, tell my side. What was my side? That I loved Emma? That I'd kept her alive and healthy and happy for 6 years? That wasn't enough. Love wasn't enough when the law preferred blood. We went to the courthouse cafeteria. I bought Emma chicken nuggets. She didn't eat them. She pulled out her processor again, examining it like it was a puzzle. What's wrong with it, sweetie? Nothing's wrong. I'm just checking something. Checking what? She looked up at me with those serious gray eyes. Nana, you know how you always tell me to write things down when I want to remember them? Yes, I did that. But I didn't write. I recorded. I didn't understand. Recorded what? Everything, Emma said. My processor has a data logging feature. The audiologist showed me during my last appointment. It records environmental sounds for troubleshooting, but it also records everything. If I turn it on, my heart started beating faster. What did you record? Emma pulled a small notebook from her jacket pocket. She'd been bringing it to visitations with Claire for the past 4 months. I'd thought she was drawing. I made notes, she said, of dates and times. When I turned the recording on, "Want to see?" The notebook was filled with Emma's careful handwriting. Dates, timestamps, locations. June 3rd, McDonald's, 2:47 p.m. Mom talking to friend outside bathroom. June 17th, park visit, 3:22 p.m. Mom on phone. July 1st, library, 4:15 p.m. Mom in parking lot. On and on. 26 entries over 4 months. Emma, what's on these recordings? She looked at me very seriously. The truth, Nana. You always said truth matters, so I recorded it. Because I noticed things, and I thought someone should know, but I didn't think anyone would believe me if I just said it, so I saved the proof. My hands were shaking. What kind of things did you notice? Mom still uses drugs, Nana. She's very careful, but I pay attention. I saw her hands shaking. I saw her pupils get tiny. I heard her talk to her friend Marcus about getting pills. I heard her tell her sponsor she was clean when I knew she wasn't, because I'd seen her take something in the bathroom an hour before. I heard her on the phone telling someone she just needed custody because then she'd get more money from disability for taking care of me, and after a few months, she could leave me with Marcus's sister while she went to California. She doesn't want to be my mom. She just wants the benefits check. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Why didn't you tell me? Emma's eyes filled with tears. Because everyone kept saying Mom was different now. The social worker said I should give her a chance. Dr. Brennan said I should be open-minded. You looked so sad all the time. And I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was imagining things because I didn't want to leave you. But then I remembered what you taught me about facts, so I collected facts. We went back to court. James called me to the stand. I testified about routines, about Emma's medical needs, about the life we'd built. Patricia Hammond cross-examined me. Was I trying to replace Emma's mother? No. Did I think I was better equipped than Claire to raise Emma? I thought I was more stable. Did I have concerns about my age affecting my ability to parent? I'd thought about it. Was I willing to put Emma's needs above my own desire to keep her? That question was a knife. Of course I was. But what were Emma's needs? That was the question. The judge looked tired. Mrs. Morrison, I appreciate your dedication to your granddaughter, but based on the evidence presented, I'm inclined to grant Miss Morrison's petition for custody. I believe reunification is in Emma's best interest. With appropriate supports in place and continued visitation for you as grandmother. Emma stood up. She just stood up in the middle of the courtroom, holding her cochlear processor in one hand and her notebook in the other. Your Honor? Her voice was clear, careful. She'd been practicing speech for 6 years. Every word was deliberate. May I present my observations? I've been documenting for 4 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. The courtroom went silent. The judge looked startled. Emma, sweetheart, this is a grown-up proceeding. I know. But it's about me. And I have evidence. Important evidence. James looked at me. I nodded. He stood. Your Honor, if the child has relevant information, I believe the court should hear it. Patricia Hammond objected. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The child is 9 years old and has been coached. I haven't been coached, Emma interrupted, and I'd never been more proud of her. I've been observing, like Nana taught me. Scientists observe and record data. That's what I did. The judge looked between Emma and Claire. Claire's face had gone pale. Approach the bench, Emma. Emma walked up to the judge. Her slight limp from the time she'd broken her ankle at age 5 more pronounced when she was nervous. She handed the judge her processor and her notebook. The audiologist can download the data logs from the processor. They're stored in the device memory. I noted which dates and times to check in my notebook. There are 26 recordings total. They prove my mom is still using drugs and only wants custody for the money. The judge looked at the processor like it was a bomb. She looked at Patricia Hammond. Counselor, were you aware of any recordings? No, Your Honor. This is inadmissible. The child can't consent to recording. The child can consent to her own medical device's features, James interjected. Cochlear implant processors with data logging are standard for monitoring device performance. Emma used a feature of her own medical device. There's no wiretapping violation. The judge looked at Claire. Miss Morrison, do you have any objection to this evidence being reviewed? Claire's lawyer whispered something to her urgently. Claire shook her head, but her hands were shaking. No, Your Honor. Then we'll take a recess while I have this device examined by a neutral expert. Bailiff, please contact the audiology department at Children's Hospital and see if they can send someone immediately. It took 4 hours. The audiologist arrived with a laptop and specialized software. She downloaded the data logs in the judge's chambers. I didn't hear them. I sat in the hallway with Emma while James went in to listen with the judge and both lawyers and the court reporter. Emma leaned against me, exhausted. Did I do the right thing, Nana? You told the truth, baby. That's always right. Is Mom going to be mad at me? I thought about how to answer that. Finally, I said, Your mom is sick. Addiction is a sickness. She might be mad, or sad, or scared. But that's not your fault. You didn't make her use drugs. You just told the truth about it. When James came out, his face was grim. He sat down next to us. Emma, your recordings were very clear, very detailed. The judge is reviewing the transcripts now. 20 minutes later, we were called back in. The judge's face was hard. She looked at Claire. Miss Morrison, I've reviewed the audio evidence. I've heard you explicitly discussing ongoing drug use, including identifying your supplier by name. I've heard you state that you intend to use your daughter's disability status to obtain SSI benefits and then abandon her with an unvetted third party while you relocate. I've heard you deceive your sponsor, your therapist, and your employer about your sobriety status. Do you have anything to say? Claire was crying, real crying, not the performance tears from her testimony. I'm sorry. I didn't. I was going to stop. I was going to get clean for real once I got Emma back. I just needed... You needed to exploit your daughter, the judge said, and her voice was ice. I'm denying your petition for custody. Furthermore, I'm terminating your visitation rights pending completion of a supervised treatment program and psychiatric evaluation. Mrs. Morrison Sr., custody remains with you. I'm appointing a guardian ad litem to monitor Emma's welfare and will review this case in 1 year. But as of today, Emma stays with her grandmother. The gavel came down. It was over. The social worker, Amanda, approached me afterward. She looked like she'd been slapped. Mrs. Morrison, I should have listened more carefully. I should have investigated more thoroughly. I'm sorry. I didn't have the energy to be gracious. You should have trusted that a 9-year-old who spent her whole life learning to observe and compensate for what she can't hear might notice things you missed. In the car on the way home, Emma was quiet. Finally, she said, Nana, am I bad for getting Mom in trouble? I pulled over. We were 3 blocks from our house, right in front of the park where I used to push Emma on the swings when she was little, before the cochlear implant, when we communicated entirely in signs and exaggerated expressions. I turned to look at her. Emma Grace Morrison, you are not bad. You are brave and smart and honest. Your mom got herself in trouble by making bad choices. You didn't do that to her. You protected yourself. And you know what? You protected her too. Because now maybe she'll get real help, real treatment. Not because a court ordered it, but because she knows she can't fool anyone anymore. Especially not you. I still love her, Emma said, and started crying. I know she's sick and she did bad things, but she's still my mom and I still love her. I held her while she sobbed. This brilliant, observant, courageous child who'd spent 4 months quietly collecting evidence that her own mother was lying to everyone, who'd had to grow up way too fast, who'd had to be her own advocate because the adults around her, including me, hadn't noticed what she noticed. I know you love her, baby. That's okay. Love doesn't stop just because someone hurts us. But love also doesn't mean we let someone hurt us over and over. You can love your mom and still need to be safe from her. Both things can be true. That was 9 months ago. Claire's in a court-ordered residential treatment program now. She can write letters to Emma. That's all. Emma reads them sometimes. Sometimes she writes back. Short letters. Dear Mom, I'm in 4th grade now. I got an A on my science project about sound waves. I hope you're getting better. Love, Emma. Dr. Brennan apologized to me. She said she'd made assumptions based on attachment theory, without considering that Emma's need for security didn't mean I was overprotective. It meant Emma was traumatized and I was her safe person. She said she'd learned something important about listening to children, really listening, especially children who've learned to observe because they can't always rely on hearing. Amanda Rice doesn't work for social services anymore. I don't know if she quit or was fired. I don't actually care. Emma still has her notebook. She showed it to her class during a presentation on assistive technology. Her teacher called me afterward, amazed. Emma explained how her cochlear implant works, and then she talked about how technology can be used to find truth. She said scientists observe and record data, and that's what she did. Mrs. Morrison, your granddaughter is remarkable. I know she is. I've always known. Last week, Emma had her annual audiologist appointment. They updated her processor software, checked her implant function, reviewed her progress. Everything's perfect. On the way out, Emma asked the audiologist, "Can you show my friend Zoe about the data logging feature? She has a processor too, and she was asking me about it." The audiologist looked at me. I nodded. She showed Zoe and her mother how to access the logging features, explained how it tracks environmental sound quality, helps troubleshoot problems. Emma stood there looking proud. In the car, I asked her, "Why did you want Zoe to know about that?" Emma shrugged. Her mom's boyfriend moved in last month. Zoe says he's nice, but sometimes she feels weird around him. I told her she should pay attention to her feelings, and maybe keep track of things, just in case. You know, like you taught me. Facts matter. My chest got tight. Emma, if Zoe's worried about something, she should tell a grown-up she trusts. She did, Emma said simply. She told me. And I told her what you always say. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Notice everything. Remember everything. And if you need proof, make sure you have it. I thought about being 65, 70, 75. I thought about Dr. Williams saying I was too old, too temporary. Maybe she was right. But I'd taught Emma to be observant, to value truth, to document facts, to stand up for herself even when it was hard. Those lessons would last longer than I would. Those lessons would protect her long after I was gone. We pulled into our driveway, the house with the porch that still needs painting. Emma grabbed her backpack and headed inside, talking about her homework and whether we could make spaghetti for dinner, and did I know that Maine Coon cats can weigh up to 25 pounds. I sat in the car for a moment, watching her through the window. My granddaughter, my brilliant, brave, beautiful granddaughter, who'd learned to hear at age 3 and never stopped listening, who'd learned that the truth matters more than what people want to believe, who'd learned that sometimes the adults get it wrong and children have to be their own advocates. I taught her that. Not on purpose, not with a plan. But I taught her that by showing her what it looks like to pay attention, to care about details, to trust herself when everyone else was telling her she was wrong. She's 9 years old. She's got a hearing aid and a slight limp, and a mother who chose drugs over her, and a grandmother who's 65 and getting older every day. But she's also got courage and intelligence and the kind of quiet strength that comes from having to fight for her place in the world since the day she was born. That night, after Emma went to bed, I pulled out her custody file, all my documentation, my journals, my careful records of every doctor's appointment and IEP meeting and medication dosage. All the things I thought would prove I deserved to keep her. None of it mattered in the end. What mattered was what Emma had documented herself. What Emma had observed and recorded and presented with perfect calm to a judge who'd been ready to send her back to a mother who saw her as a paycheck. I still have that dried-out gas station cupcake from Emma's 3rd birthday, the day Claire left her with me for 2 days. I took it out of the box and looked at it, this desiccated thing that represented broken promises and abandoned children and all the ways parents fail their kids. Then I threw it away. Because Emma's 10th birthday is in 6 weeks, and I'm planning a party with her friends from school and speech therapy, and her violin teacher who still gamely endures Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, played at approximately the right pitch about 60% of the time. Emma wants a cat-themed cake, specifically a Maine Coon, because they're the biggest, and she's decided bigger is better when it comes to cats. I'm 65, In 5 years, I'll be 70. In 10 years, 75. Maybe I won't be here to see Emma graduate high school. Maybe Dr. Williams was right about that. But I'm here now, and Emma's here now. And she knows how to listen, how to observe, how to document the truth even when it hurts. She knows she's worth protecting. She knows her voice matters. I taught her that. And whatever happens, however many years I have left, that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.